Hello, today we're going to be building a low-cost rover that you can control with your smartphone. Okay, so let's get started here. So to build a low-cost rover, you're going to need the following tools. First of all, most important, set of safety glasses. As you can see here, I've got bifocal safety glasses. You will want these. So please wear these, because we don't want to end up having something hitting our eyes or something splashing and hitting us. So I'm putting them on. Also, you can hear in the background I've got a vacuum, an HVAC setup. That's what's humming. So because there's fumes being emitted, so you're gonna want to make sure that when you do this, that you have some kind of ventilation, either in a well-ventilated room or that. Also, of course, you're gonna need a soldering iron. You can see right here I've got a Hako soldering iron. You don't need something this fancy, but something like that. You also need some solder. I've got it over here on a spool. This is lead-free solder. You will also need a pair of flush cuts. So these are for cutting wires and various types of metal. Don't try to cut anything that's too hard on these. You'll also need a pair of needle nose pliers for grabbing things. A wire stripper for stripping wires. A Sharpie for writing your name on stuff. And of course the low-cost rover. So before you do this, probably want to go and make sure you know the basics of soldering. I'll have linked it in the video description, some good videos, and I'll reiterate some of this as I go through this. Hopefully you'll get a good technique as you do this. So without further ado, let's actually get started to building this. So here is the board, and I'm going to make sure that my recording apparatus is still working. And it is. Alright, that's good. Just want to make sure this thing doesn't cut off while I'm doing this. So basically I want you to look around and make sure you fully understand or get a good idea of how this works. Over here you have your the name of it, and you have a serial number. So this one is the version 6, and it's got the serial number HWLCR03V6.1A. The A stands for Arduino. So you can notice they've got various parts on here. As we go through, you'll notice that there are different parts. I want to make sure you understand that this is known as a pad. If you look here, you can see little lines. These are known as traces. And those would connect things together. And the parts that connect to them are known as leads. Also note on the back how there's a white spot on it. That white spot is for your name. So the first thing we are going to do is take our handy dandy Sharpie, and we are going to put our name on it. So my name is Jonathan, so I'm going to put down my full name. And this is so that if yours doesn't get misplaced without someone else's. Like that. Alright. So now we've gotten that part taken care of. So now what we're going to do is we're going to solder on a 1K resistor. So the 1K resistor looks like this. I might put a little piece of tape on it, and if you're making a kit, you probably have a piece of tape on it. You can identify it by the fact that it will not, of your resistors in your kit, it will not have a yellow stripe on it. If it's the one with the yellow stripe, that's 100K. Do not use that one yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the resistor, we're going to pull it off like that. So I grabbed it by a little piece like that, and I'm going to just discard this little piece. So I've got this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it with my hand, I'm going to make a little U shape like that. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on my board and find where it says 1K, which is right here, resistor R2. And what I'm going to do is there's 2 holes on it. I'm going to stick it through those 2 holes like so. Somewhat flat like that. So I'm going to put my finger on it like that. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to bend the leads out like that. This is so that the parts don't fall down. So I'm going to place it down like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my soldering iron, I'm going to grab it like a pencil and hold it with my dominant hand. I'm left-handed, so I'm using my left hand. Then I take my solder with my right hand, like so, and I'm going to want to make sure it's clean. I've got a solder sponge over here. And if you notice on the tip, it's got like a chisel tip on it. Yours might not, but that's not really too important. And what I want to do is I'm trying to solder, I want to provide heat to the system. This thing is not what I'm trying to heat up. I'm trying to make this hot enough to melt the solder. So you want to avoid painting it, is what I've seen, what I call it. And that's where you try to put solder on the iron and try to get the iron to do it. It's not going to work. What you want to do is heat up, so you have the pad and the lead. So I'm going to take my iron and I'm going to make sure it's touching both the pad and the lead, like so. Then I'm going to come in with my solder, and I'll probably have a close-up as I do this. I'm going to heat it up, and it's going to melt in place. And don't breathe in the smoke. And you're going to want to add enough until it looks like that. If you see into that little hole there, then you have what's known as a void, and that's not good. So then I'm going to repeat, like so. That's good. And it should be somewhat concave. It should kind of come like this, inwards. It shouldn't like bulge over, because if it looks like that, then it's got too much solder. Once you're done, put up the iron, pull out your flush cuts. We're going to go flush with the board, and we're going to clip them off. Now, take these and put them to the side. You're going to need this for later. As you can see, this is what it looks like. Alright, so you've gotten the first resistor on. Now you've got another resistor. This one's the 100K resistor. Looks like this. It's 100K. You'll be able to identify it by the yellow band on it. It'll be brown, black, yellow, and then gold. So, of course, pull it off and we repeat the process. We'll do that by bending it. So bend it in a U shape. Stick it through the hole. This goes into R1. So I'll stick it through the holes like that. Put it flat. Flip it over. Then it leads out. Push it down. Pull out this. And that beeping sound is just it heating up. The proper temperature for this is for this one's between 700 and 800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 300 to 400 degrees Celsius. So then I'll come in like this. Have it touching the iron to lead in the pad, flow some solder into place, and it heats up. I put up the iron. The seat is moving, so clip off the leads. Put the leads to the side. So, also, while I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead and point out something that might be, that you're going to want to note. So, as we just mentioned, you're trying to heat up the system. So, something you're going to want to look for is, if you ever notice on some of these pads, you'll notice they have like a little target shape. So, for example, take a look at this one. On that corner, you'll see there's like a little plus sign here. There's a little bit of a radius around it. Those are known as, they're connected to what's known as the ground plane. If they're connected to the ground plane, that means there's a giant piece of copper that's filling up this board, and that means that you've got a giant heat sink. So these ones are typically going to take you much longer to solder. So note that, so that if you find that one of these pads is more difficult to solder, then that's why. So next, after we do that, we're going to solder on our capacitor. Capacitor is this little blue thing like this. It's a 10 microfarad capacitor, and if you look for C1, which is the one below that 100K resistor you just did, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend these out a little bit so they can fit. It might take a little bit of finagling to get it to work. And I stick it in these two holes, like so. You kind of have to, and you'll feel it kind of snap into place, like that. Don't push too hard, otherwise you might break it. And of course, same theory, bend these outwards, like that. Flip it over, and then solder it. At this point, you should already be a master at soldering through whole components. And these two you don't have to save. Don't worry about those. Those are too short to use for anything. Alright, so it should look like this at this point. So next thing we are going to do is these little things. These are called IC sockets. So these little things have our special chips. They look like little, they look like these. And the problem is if those get damaged, you have to remove them. So what we're going to use is what's known as IC socket, which are these little things. So what I've done is I've taken them and I've marked them with a paint marker. I've marked these chips. If you ever notice, these chips have a little notch on it. It's right here. It's a little bit easier to see on, like, for example, these. You can see that little notch. And that notch indicates the top of it. This is important because if you put these in backwards, typically what will happen is they will explode. We don't want them to explode. And either that or they just get really hot and burn someone. Normally it's the second one, but... So what I'm going to do is, if you notice, I put a notch on these boards. So I'm going to take that white spot and I'm going to line it up with notch and it's going to slide in like this. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my finger on like that. See how I'm holding it kind of like a paint, like you'd hold a picture. I'm going to flip it over and then I'm going to take my fingernail. I'm going to bend out two of the pins like so. Two of the diagonals, like that. And then we're going to get plenty of practice soldering it. So once you've got those diagonals in, then what you want to do is come in with your iron and solder those diagonals. So if you want to, a good idea is rotate the board. The board doesn't, you want to just rotate it to whatever feels comfortable. I'm going to solder one pin, turn it around, and then solder that other pin. And this will prevent it from moving while you're soldering. See? Then what we're going to do, I'm going to come in and I'm going to solder all the remaining pins like this. Oop. These ones in the center for this part are going to be the ones that are connected to the ground plane, so it's these four here. Eventually you get really good at this. Just adding solder. So also the smoke you're seeing is actually the flux. So there's a little bit of a chemical inside the solder, and that prevents it from the pad from oxidizing. So that smoke, if you breathe it in, can cause asthma, so don't breathe it in. And that's what it. And what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that, but this time for the other one. So I find the notch, which is that little U shape, which says notch. Put it in like that, flip it over, holding it down, bend the leads in, like that. Come in, my iron, and alright, so that one's good. So at this point your board should look like this. So next we are going to solder on the voltage detector. The voltage detector is this little black thing with a D-shaped package. It'll say S808 36CN EZ27 or something like that. And this is known as a TO92 package. Normally your common transistors would be in this, but that's not too important. So what you're going to do is you look for U3, and there's a flat side on it. So that flat side is going to go like this. So you can take your thing and you're going to kind of grab it with your finger and bend it out like that, so that it kind of looks like this, as you can see. So So then what you're going to do is you are going to take it so that the flat side lines up, and you're going to stick it through these 3 holes. Like so. Push it down. It doesn't have to go down all the way. This one you're probably going to want to have it come out about that much. You can see. So then I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to bend it out like this.